Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel. Or shall I call it Misery Corner? Because that is all the Chelsea Football Club provide nowadays. Because we were, awoken is not the right word because it was in the middle of the day, but we were met with an absolute bombshell of news. Don't demonetize me for this. It's just news, right? What a word. Julian Nagelsmann has turned down Chelsea Football Club. Julian Nagelsmann just told us no. Now, of course, if you want to, you can believe Chelsea's PR brief, which came out about half an hour to an hour after Fabrizio Romano confirmed that Julian Nagelsmann basically was something to do with us. And they're now, pushing all sorts of reports out. They're like, oh, yeah, we had these issues and those issues, and he was bad here and he was bad there. All sorts of waffle because we have, well, in my opinion at least, because we have been publicly embarrassed and made to look like not even just, like when the whole thing happened, whenever it was, and the fans put up the banner that said the circus continues. It's not even a circus anymore. This is an abandoned circus. It's not even a real circus. A circus has some good bits about it. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing good about Chelsea Football Club nowadays. Everything's just shit. There's nothing good anymore. What was good? Our players are all dreadful, except Enzo Fernandez maybe. Reece James is constantly injured. But I mean, you know what we did? We were so stupid. We took Joao Felix on the most expensive loan in history. He was so shit for us while we were so shit with him that we now devalued him by like 20, 30 million, making him half the price for all the Premier League clubs to sign him in the summer. So that is fucking brilliant. I mean, how bad can a year go? How bad can a season go? It's just ridiculous. Everything these owners have touched so far has gone to shit. Everything. Tell me one thing that's gone well. Yeah, great, Enzo Fernandez. Whoa, how much longer is he going to want to stay with everything that's happening now? I know we've tied him down until flipping 2032, but, Thibaut went AWOL. Who's to say someone else isn't going to go AWOL someday? Enzo Fernandez went AWOL for flipping Benfica when trying to sign for us. What's good anymore? We're screwed, man. We're screwed. You guys know I'm ever the optimist. I try so hard to be flipping optimistic all the time. What if they got me left now? The best managerial option is a flipping almost Spurs legend, because he was the only successful manager, reasonably successful manager by their standards, in the last 50 odd years. Pochettino is now the best option. What has happened? Now we'll get into more detail of that because he's now the number one favorite apparently. So chances are we'll end up with Pochettino. So we better get ready for that and we better prepare ourselves because there's going to be a lot to talk about. But honestly, I'm losing my will to live here. Like how much more could, like Charlie just said it before we went live. We don't even play this weekend and we still aren't given one weekend without misery. We don't even have a game and we still can't be in peace for once. Oh my days. I don't even know. I don't even know what to say anymore. Pice, I'll start with you. We'll go through all the detailed news as they came out and whatever all the outlets have said. Let's just go with your opinion for now, or your feelings, because I don't think anyone saw this coming, even though you said a few times, you have a bad feeling it might end up being Poch or whatever. I mean, I tweeted, I think it was today, literally. Yeah, I still believe it's going to be Nagelsmann, and, I think they're only talking to Pochettino to, take a look at all their options. Well, how wrong I was. Cheers, Bowley. And with Stanley and Laurenz Stewart and Egbali and whoever flipping else is involved. I don't even know anymore. Does it matter? No, they're all clowns anyway. Pice, please. I know you're probably going to struggle with that because you're usually even less optimistic than I am. But is there anything positive? Like anything?
I mean, the only positive thing, I guess, is that, he's got a track record of developing young players. But, I don't know the ceiling we can hit with him. He did a good job at Spurs by Spurs standards, I guess. PSG, he won a couple of the trophies, but he was sacked, and just a lot of negative reports about his stint, whether it be egos in the dressing room, that type of thing. To be fair, the usual thing that happens at PSG. And obviously he did very well at Southampton, but he has got the Premier League experience. But I just feel that, again, this is the wrong employment in terms of like the fan base. I don't think the fans will give him a chance. I particularly don't want to give him a chance. I don't like him, but if he does join, then I'll just support the club and just see how it goes with him. I guess actions will speak louder than words, but words also do help as well. So we'll see what he's like if he does join. He seems to be the nailed on candidate at the moment now. But yeah, I did see this coming, to be honest. I think if you just look at him as an individual, he suits what our current squad is. Premier League experience, young players. He kind of overachieved at Spurs without having huge backing. If he got huge backing here, he could do very well. But I don't know, man. Like, even the Spurs thing, the league has definitely changed since then. There's a lot more better managers now, and of course they didn't win the league. So yeah, if they won the Champions League, if Spurs won the Champions League, if he won the Premier League, it's definitely a little bit of a different conversation. But he didn't, and I just have concerns over his authority. I have concerns over. Well, I mean, I don't know too much in depth tactically, but again, it's just not an appointment that would inspire me. Really, it's not something that gets me upbeat. It's not something that's really fresh, to be honest. For me, it's not something exciting, and I don't think it will go down well with the match-going fans. As soon as we hit a bad patch, I think it will be more toxicity, and the fans will never forget that he was Spurs manager, and they will never forget the Battle of the Bridge where he was on the pitch, and he's been an enemy for us. So I don't understand why they're going for him. But what can we do? They're going to do things their own way, and yeah, there's not much else to say. It's just very disappointing, really.
Yeah, I don't disagree, mate. I don't disagree. Let me take it to you, Charlie. Thank you for coming on again. I appreciate it, as always. Where do you put your thoughts at the moment? I know you weren't quite as drastically against Pochettino as Pice was. Now, I was probably somewhere between Pice and you, more against it than seemingly a few others were. But the problem is now, what Pice just said in terms of the fans won't accept it type thing. The problem is, well, I mean, we've already told Enrique to go do one. So I don't think if we came, even if we wanted to, even if we came back crawling to him, he's going to tell us to F off. Nagelsmann is now done. And now with the managerial option that does leave, is Pochettino then the best one? Maybe he is. I don't know. But what I know is that it just feels like we've been ridiculed as a football club. When other than Pep Guardiola, when have we ever not gotten a manager that we wanted?
Yeah, but it's different, isn't it? Now, I think.
Of course, it's different, but that's still that they achieved that in the space of 1 year. It took them 1 year to ruin.
What I would say is though, is that. But Bowley and co, they're not conducting the interviews, so it's not that isn't on them. If the guys that have been put in place to do their jobs of Avels, Winstanley's, Laurenz, Stewart's, etc., if the feedback from them is that they're unsure on a couple of pointers, or they don't think it quite matches up, or whatever it is, then that's better that they make those decisions rather than Bowley making those decisions. So if they've decided that it's not good enough, if these people have been put in place to make the decisions and they decide it's not good enough, all right, yeah, it might not be our personal preference and whatnot, but we have to trust these people, don't we?
But do you believe?
No,
because to me it just seems just hilariously comedic timing, where it's Fabrizio Romano reports Nagelsmann turned us down. Half an hour later, all the reports come out as to why we apparently have our doubts over Nagelsmann. Do you not see that as purely Chelsea briefing the media?
But there's always going to be a briefing. If
that's what I'm saying. So that's why I'm do we believe that we didn't want him? Maybe we found everything great about him, but he just didn't. Yeah, about us. That's my issue.
Yeah, maybe, but I guess we're never going to know, because one side's going to say, like Nagelsmann saying on Sky Deutschland, there was nothing to commit to in the first place, sort of thing. I mean, that wasn't the exact translation, but something along those lines. Yeah. And obviously Chelsea aren't going to, like any club, aren't going to admit they're rejected. They'll put their own spin on it, saying, there's a couple of things we didn't agree with, a couple of major points and whatnot. Ultimately, the main thing is that, if Nagelsmann wasn't 100% committed to us, to manage us, then, as annoying as it is, and he would have been my preferred choice and a lot of people's preferred choices, I suppose in the long run, if he wasn't 100% committed to taking the job, then surely that's a good thing. that he doesn't take charge if he's not fully invested in doing it, if that makes sense. But I mean, I look at Poch and I think, look, wouldn't be my preferred choice. But I also feel there's a lot of recency bias involved when people analyse him as a manager. Yes, at PSG, he didn't go down well there. The football they played wasn't great. You know, he struggled to manage the dressing room there, made a lot of mistakes. You know, yes, he won the French league there, French Cups, whatever. Yeah, everyone does that. And he got sacked by PSG. Everyone's been sacked by PSG.
And
so
also, he didn't win it in every season of his
No,
season.
first
he took
season,
over from Tuchel, he didn't win the league.
No, they were a point behind Lille when he took over, and they finished a point behind Lille. So he didn't win it in his first season, no. But he did win it. Yeah, fine, whatever. I think the body of work that he did at Spurs, now, again, going back a few years, I think 2018, there's been an old article doing the rounds on Twitter that, you know, when Conte left, Poch was Roman's preferred choice to come in and replace Conte. Like that was the number one target. So it's not like Chelsea looking at Pochettino is not necessarily a new thing. I can understand, for me, like why people look at the Tottenham thing and they think, oh, I don't like that sort of thing. But it's not like a Benitez thing where he's publicly like slated or criticised the club. And you know, he's a good manager. He does tick a lot of the boxes in terms of what Chelsea are supposedly looking for in a manager to lead this kind of long-term quote unquote project that we keep talking about. He does tick a lot of boxes. Is he a winner? Is he a winner? Not necessarily, you know, but you know, he's won stuff at he'd won more stuff than Sarri's won before Sarri joined us, you know, and a lot of people are big fans of Sarri. I think, you know,
but only at PSG.
Yeah, of course.
Like,
only
where you're basically guaranteed trophies.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, you still got to do it. But I mean, look, I don't think this is as bad as a lot of people are making out. Is my point. And do we not also think that? I mean, obviously, this is kind of moving it forward a little bit. If Poch were to join, also on Poch's Big Six record, that's with Tottenham. Like we do, despite how shit we are right now, we do have a much better squad and a much brighter future than Tottenham had. So and
a much worse record against
yeah. But I mean, you'd think if he took over during his time there, he would have a much better record, you would imagine, against the top six than he did with Tottenham. But I just look at his work they did at Spurs. All right, they didn't win anything, but you could see season upon season there was incremental improvement every single year. Yes, they got to a Champions League final and they didn't. And they didn't, you know, they didn't turn up in that. Fine, but no one who would expect Spurs to get to a Champions League final.
They got a penalty given against them in like the first minute. Like.
Yeah, and then he started.
See, it's weird. Sorry to interrupt you on that.
Yeah.
For me, the Poch thing is because I think if we're being objective about it and we take the whole we hate Spurs thing out of it for a second, I think everyone will agree that what Poch did at Tottenham was a good job.
It was also, a great job.
What he did at Southampton, even though I don't know it in as much detail, was also a good job.
As was a Spaniel. He did a great job there.
Exactly. What I find the most worrying thing about it is as soon as he went to a big club at PSG, he started failing. And when I saw PSG playing the Champions League, I'm like, they literally played Simeone ball while having Neymar and Mbappe. Like, you can't do that. Like, that's just, like, you have at the time one of, if not the most expensive squad in the world, against an aging, declining Barcelona, and you play Simeone ball for two.
Of course.
And when I see that, I'm like,
but
there's
also,
no hope then. And if even Euro expert, who is the biggest Liga fetishist I've ever seen in my life, even he says Pochettino can't break down the low block and the Liga low block. What is he going to do with us?
But what I would say though, as well, on his time at Spurs, like, and this is all hypotheticals and what ifs. Imagine if after that Champions League final, they actually didn't go 2 windows without bringing a single player in and actually backed him. And I'm not saying they would have won stuff, but it could have been interesting to see what would have happened. I don't think he wasn't fully backed at Spurs either, particularly those 2 seasons. He just done like something that Spurs probably won't do again. You get to a Champions League final, and then you go 2 whole windows without bringing a single player in. That, like, obviously that's not great. But I mean, look, I look at Poch and I just think, this idea that he's not a good manager is nonsense. If you don't like him, you don't want him, fine. But let's not pretend that he's not a good manager, because he clearly is. And you know,
you can say that same thing about Graham Potter.
Yeah, he is. It didn't work out for him here. Graham Potter is a good manager. Didn't work out for him at Chelsea. Fine. Doesn't mean he's a crap manager. Pochettino has
No,
done well.
I
Yeah.
agree with that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But
And like,
my concern is, right, Potter didn't have the big club experience, so it was like a bit of an unknown. We were like, let's see if he cannot handle it. Pochettino does have it, but it, if anything, shows that he can't handle it. So then why would, like, I say, why would you go for it? Well, because all the others have turned us down. Fair enough. But like, or we've turned them down. Like, you know, I said weeks ago where it seemed to be between Luis Enrique and Julian Nagelsmann, I'm like, I prefer Nagelsmann. I'd take both. I'd still take Enrique over Poch. Now, I understand the whole idea of, you know, this and that Premier League proven, but, and I take it to Pice with that in a second as well. I tweeted this today because to me, the whole Premier League experience is just the whole biggest load of waffle when it comes, to be honest, for managers and players. But in particular,
it's nonsense.
In particular for managers, just look at the list: Jose, Ancelotti, Conte, Tuchel. None of them ever worked a single second in the Premier League before they joined us. They are probably our 4 most successful managers.
I mean, look at De Zerbi at Brighton, come in mid-season. Just never managed it. It's managed in Ukraine, Serie A. No problem.
Exactly. At this point, I'm feeling like maybe these Premier League experienced managers are like too scared of the Premier League. Do you know what I mean? Like Potter was ever, every Premier League away game is difficult. Well, yeah, it is. But that don't mean you can't win it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I felt like he was so adamant that it's so difficult. But I'm like, well, it's true, but the other lot never saw it as that difficult. It's just so frustrating. I mean,
but quickly, mate, I was just going to quickly say, like, I don't think it's as big a disaster if this is going to happen as a lot of people are making it out to be. Like, obviously, it's not going to be a lot of people's first choice, but it's not like we're employing some. If Poch is appointed, it's not like we're appointing someone from fucking League One or something. You know, he's a proven manager, and he does tick a lot of the boxes that the owners, whether you agree with them or not, are looking for in the next manager. But let's make no mistake about it.
He's not going to be able to handle the pressure, bro.
But let's make no mistake about it, though. This next manager is not gonna suddenly transport us to title challenging. You know,
he needs to. Needs to with all the money we're spending.
Yeah, but he won't. This is my point. Like, it's going to take. I think it's going to take a couple of managers for us to get back to challenging for the league. So Poch might come in, for example.
You realise they don't want to do that, though.
Those managers, then.
Well, whether they want to do it or not, I think the reality of the situation is that we're not going to suddenly, with this next manager next season, be challenging for the top 4 again. It's going to be a big ask for us to get in the top 4 next season.
Top 4?
It will be. Yeah, for next season.
Minimum next season, bro.
It's going to be a massive ask for us to suddenly get in the top 4 from the bottom half next season. It is.
No, it's not. Because this season we've had a lot of different. We've had a lot of like circumstances this season. Like, we're going to clear the squad out and we're going to invest heavily. If we don't get top 4 next season, I don't care who the manager is. They need to be sacked.
I mean, let's see what our squad is, right? You know, I think before we make
squad
like that, we need to see what
much
our squad is. Yeah, but what is left of it? Do you know what I mean? We need to see that. Not what it is right now, what it is going into August, right? But Charlie, when you say that, what is the average life expectancy of the Chelsea managers? Do you not think that because I still think that they want that to change. I still think that the whole idea of Potter is like, when they get a manager, they want to stick with that manager. So therefore, when you're saying it's going to take 2-3 managers until we get to fight for the league again, then I'm like, okay, that's 20 years.
But my point is that
they don't want a manager for 18 months.
No, they don't. So, but what I'm saying is, like, you know, it might be, for example, that if Poch comes in, he might steady the ship, get us regularly finishing, you know, in the top 4 again, and it might be the appointment after that, which is where we kind of really push on. Maybe I don't know. I just think it's a bit unrealistic, despite the standards we have at this club, to suddenly think that yes, there's been a lot of variables this season, a lot of, you know, reasons for why things have been so difficult. But, you know, for us to just expect as fans to suddenly be back in the top 4 again next season, I just don't think that's realistic, and we have to accept
Newcastle
that.
are third in the. Newcastle third in the table. Man U. These guys haven't got good a squad as us.
No, but they don't. But like, I just think
I don't know about that one, Chief.
No chance, bro. You need to look at our squad. People are disrespecting our squad so much.
The squad is good, but like, we haven't seen them perform to a good level. There are talented players within the squad.
Because we've had shit managers, which we will have next season probably. That's why.
But like, it's not for me though. Like,
Tuchel a shit manager.
No, because he was only here for like 4 games. Tuchel wouldn't have us in 11th.
No, but I don't think he'd have us in top
No,
4
but
either.
yeah, he didn't have us winning the league or any of these attackers performing either. Is the issue? And any of the ones that were here when he was obviously here.
Yeah, look, I just feel that like whoever it is going to be a big ask next season just to get us back in the top 4. That's my point. I'm happy to be wrong on that if it turns out, but I think it will be a struggle to get 4th next season.
We have 1 game a week, by the way. If we don't get 4th, that's an absolute disgrace.
No, I think Price is right. We should get top 4.
No, we should.
But I still agree with Charlie that there's a good chance we might not. And I say that almost regardless who the manager is. Because who the fuck knows what else Bowley's going to do? He will find some sort of way to screw us over. He's done all of this year. Did you when I read this that before the game, Bowley turned up with Mudryk and his people and walked into the dressing room? I'm like, excuse me. Like,
I think that's a cultural thing, though, isn't it? Because
no,
in America,
exactly. But
it's
a
cultural
better because if he keeps doing that, there's going to be issues no matter who is here next season, and it's going to screw us next season all the same.
Yeah,
like, I'm not saying that thing as a on its own, but as in this is an example for how badly he doesn't understand certain things. So if he hasn't learned, it doesn't matter who's in charge and what the squad is. He's got to find a way to ruin it. And when I say he, that's always harsh. I mean the whole consortium that owns us. Do you know what I mean? But before I take it to Pies, let me get to 2 of these super chats here. First of all, by no one, he says, any doubt now that Bowley is on a mission? Again, I appreciate your super chat so much, no one, but you say things and I'm like, I don't even understand what you're saying. And now you paid to say it, and I still don't get what you're trying. On a mission for what? To ruin us? To do something good? What kind of mission?
I'd also just like to clarify quickly that I'm not on the Bowley payroll, just to clarify that. Someone in the chat thinks I'm on the Bowley payroll. I can confirm I'm not on the Bowley payroll.
That is a shame, because otherwise, could have got me on that as well.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
well, otherwise I would have had some influence in decisions if I was on the Bowley payroll. So, and Nagelsmann wouldn't have dropped out. So, yeah, that just like to rule that one out.
But again, I'm gonna tell you, Charlie, it ain't us that decided against Nagelsmann. I'm telling you that. It's
mate. Apparently, it was me. That's obviously my fault that Nagelsmann dropped out.
Apology. Too similar to Tuchel. That's the problem.
Yeah, apologies to everyone there that Nagelsmann's dropped out. That's on me.
Oh my days. But yeah, now please don't find positives in the story, because I can find positives in Kompany. Call a spade a spade. Again, you can find positives in Kompany. Okay, we'll get to Vincent Kompany in a minute to make things even worse. But yeah, no, fair enough. Hey, as you can hear, as you've heard me talk, I'm not particularly best pleased. Now, Charlie's bringing a bit of positivity into it, which I do appreciate and I do like, because I needed it. CFC Blue says, Kompany on the list. Are you asking to trust them? And you asking to trust them? That's the thing. Also, the report, we had doubts over Nagelsmann's age and experience. But Kompany is considered. All right, boys. Believe that one, yeah? Charlie, just lastly, before I take this to Pies, yeah? I understand a lot of what you said in terms of why Poch ain't that bad. And I also saw Lewis in the chat. I'm not sure if you're still here. Big up yourself.
Poch train.
Yeah, Poch train, exactly. I understand why Poch maybe isn't so bad. My much bigger issue than the fact that it most likely will be Poch now is the fact that we had Nagelsmann turned down. Nagelsmann turned us down. That's how I'm taking this today. And we'll get into the report in a minute. And that I find so unbelievably worrying. Like, why would Nagelsmann turn us down? Like, think about that. Like, obviously, I know with the shit show that we are. That's why. But think from his perspective. Apparently, Carlo is staying at Real Madrid. So, in from a year ago, there was no bigger club than us that is currently looking for a manager.
But just on Nagelsmann quickly, I look at it from two perspectives. For Nagelsmann, what would be perceived as a failure, I suppose, by being sacked by Bayern, does he really want to go straight from that into Chelsea, which is an environment that could easily see him record back-to-back failures on it, like early in his managerial career? Does he really want that? Is this next move the best for his career, to come straight from Bayern being sacked straight into Chelsea, which is probably one of the most difficult jobs in world football? Maybe he wants to protect his reputation a bit, and maybe he wants to go somewhere else, build himself a bit more before maybe taking a Premier League job. So I guess you could look at it from that angle. And then looking. So this is my point, that from a Nagelsmann's perspective, his next job, he cannot fail at it. There has to be a success. Whereas if he goes to Chelsea as his next job, then there's a chance that could be a failure for him. And I'm not sure, maybe he doesn't want to take that failure and have back-to-back failures on his CV. I'm not saying that's his thought process. That might just be a thought process behind it. But then you also see, obviously, this might be the Chelsea briefing or whatever it is, but I've definitely read this somewhere, and I'm not sure what the source was. Actually, that supposedly that actually I think Pice tweeted. I think it was Miguel Delaney saying that there was too many similarities between Nagelsmann and Tuchel in terms of.
But again, that came out after we found out that Nagelsmann that. I don't believe any of it. Honestly, I'm telling you.
I mean,
he was our favorite until Fabrizio released that news, and all of a sudden we had all.
The problem we've got is that like we're basically trying to we're going fishing in a pond of information, and we just got to pick out what we think's right. We don't know.
Like, I understand the whole failure and not failure. That's fair enough. But realistically, that issue will apply no matter where he goes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe we're a little bit more difficult, but at the same time, you're like, we don't even have Europe. Look at what Conte did with us without Europe. Do you know what I mean? Is it even that difficult? You know, but there's no expectation. I mean, like Pi says, top 4 minimum. But from the public, we just finished 11th. There's the public expectations for next season will be quite minimal. So why? And like, what are his other options? Maybe PSG, maybe Real Madrid.
Well, maybe I think
they're not going to be any easier. And like, let's not forget, we have his not best mate, but his mate from Leipzig works for us, and he still turned us down.
Something's not right.
That's why it just makes me concerned. But I'm like, does anyone in the whole football industry take us seriously anymore? And because that's the concerning thing. Because I remember back to the days where we were trying to, or we had Michy Batshuayi out on loan at Dortmund. And I forget his first name, Jan Michael Watzke, I think. There's some sort of director of Dortmund. He said they wanted to sign Batshuayi. But if Roman Abramovich says no, it's no. Right now, it just feels like no matter what we say, they would rather throw pie in our face because we're just clowns. That's what we're perceived as now. And that's the part that worries me so much.
What I would say is that it's two things on this. One thing is that I'm pleased that we are interviewing multiple people and like doing our due diligence and a thorough process. Fine, not a problem with that at all. It's absolutely essential that we get the right thing. And if you listen to loads of different managers' ideas, no problem. But what I would say is that it seems to me quite concerning now that we've somehow ended up with a 3-man shortlist from reports coming out today that we're left with Pochettino, Vincent Kompany, and an unnamed candidate as the final choice. Obviously, Nagelsmann was that fourth one, but looks like he's dropped out now. So you're looking at essentially we've carried out an extensive process, and unless more stuff develops in the coming days, weeks, or whatever, then we're left with how have we ended up in a situation where you can go from Nagelsmann and Enrique and whatnot, and then you're left with a 3-man shortlist of Poch, Kompany, and an unnamed candidate.
I'm not sure. How can there even be an unnamed candidate? I mean, how is that even possible?
I don't know.
What do they know, Jan? What are these journalists all doing, man? Absolute clowns, the flipping bunch of them, honestly. All right. Pice, I'll ask you a question, and then we'll I'll bring the whole initial tweet from Fabrizio Romano up on screen now. If we can flip and find it, my days. Well, why isn't it there now? Should be there. All right, even more super chats. I'll get to it in a minute, ladies and gentlemen, please. Is that it? Exclusive, yes. So we start with that. That's the news that came out was that the initial one? I think so. 4:38 p.m. my time. Exclusive. Julian Nagelsmann has now withdrawn from the race to become the new Chelsea head coach. It looks like it's his final decision. German coach is said to be no longer available after multiple rounds of talks. Nagelsmann was top candidate for the job. Again, Fabrizio reiterated that. He was top candidate for the job. Not we had doubts, we told him this and that, blah, blah, blah. He turned us down. Could you at all, Pice, see that Nagelsmann took this as well? You've talked to me since the international break, or since whenever we sacked Potter. Basically, straight away, we apparently, made contact with him. And now it's God knows how many weeks later, 3 weeks later, and we're still talking to managers. Do you at all think part of why he said, stopped at some point or pulled out at some point is because he's like, well, if you wanted me, you would have hired me by now. Clearly, you don't want me, therefore, screw you. Do you see that at all as a situation, or do you simply see it as talks and talks and talks, and certain crucial points, as Fabrizio said in a different tweet, which I'll get up later, were never agreed upon? Like, how do you view? Obviously, we're purely speculating now, but I'm just curious how you see it and what you think are possibilities for why Nagelsmann did that. I'm just trying to clutch at straws where it's like, yeah, I didn't want to wait for so long, rather than thinking we're clowns, and that's why I don't understand. You know what I mean, I hope they don't think of us as clowns. A lot of them. That's my issue, maybe.
Yeah, I think the first scenario is definitely possible. I think, if like if I was a manager and I was being interviewed, like I would, especially after like we were told, oh, they had positive talks. So then you kind of think, if they have positive talks, then maybe he was expecting a job offer, and then Chelsea were like, well, we need to interview others and that type of thing. The process is still ongoing. So maybe he feels like, well, they just don't want me as much then, as, they don't want me type thing. Maybe he felt a bit betrayed after the positive talks. I don't know. But, there's a lot of different reports coming out. I mean, the whole like sort of, structural differences, they didn't agree on key points. I mean, it's definitely interesting because I put out a quote, I think like 2 nights ago, where Nagelsmann was saying about how he works with the Bayern Munich board to identify targets, and that they all work together type thing. And I read that quote and I thought, yeah, okay, this is definitely going to work. He's got Christopher Vivell here, he's got Stuart here. They've worked together. It seems the perfect appointment. There's already people, obviously, that have worked with higher ups. And also, he's the former manager of Christopher Nkunku, so he'd have a plan for him. There would be no worries about wasting 50 million on Nkunku, because he would be, one of the priorities of the squad. And it just all seemed perfect. He's a young manager. That we've had previous interest in him before, and I just think he suited our whatever our project is. To be honest, I used to be able to explain it, but I'm getting kind of more concerned now. But yeah, I mean, I did think it would be him, but I don't know what to believe. To be honest, I don't think anyone will know the truth. Even with some of the stuff that's coming out at the moment, like Kompany in the final shortlist, I think it's absolute bullshit. There's simply no way Chelsea could have a guy who's managed Burnley and Anderlecht in the final shortlist for the Chelsea job. I literally refuse to believe the people that they've employed are that incompetent and stupid. So that's what I'm going to choose to believe, because if that is actually true, then fuck me, we're in more trouble than I thought.
It's true. It's a weird one, because what Kompany has actually done with Burnley is actually mighty impressive, but it's in the Championship. It's, I actually think Kompany will be a really good manager, but it's just not now. Like, we all said Potter was basically, we picked him too soon from like being this up and coming manager. Yeah. Think about Kompany. I mean, yeah, Kompany has a different kind of experience with having played for City, but that also applies to Lampard, right? And we see how that goes. So at the same time, obviously, if you mix it, having that experience like Kompany has as a player, plus being a better manager than Lampard, which is sure it does seem like, because turning Burnley from, being Brexit football, 2.0, not even 2.0, 1.0, the original, into playing the way they are, super offensive, expansive football, it's very impressive. But come on, man. Like that just can't be the thing. It just cannot be. Let me read out a couple more super chats here before we continue on with the reports. Miguel says, Poch will be a great fit for Chelsea because it's to build a team for future for next manager. Also, no to Mourinho part 3 because he killed next great Chelsea team. I mean, he kind of did. That is true. I understand where you're coming from as a fan with this, and Charlie kind of hinted from a similar perspective, didn't you, Charlie, in terms of, Poch essentially saying Poch won't be here forever. But that's the bit that concerns me a little bit, because the board, the ownership, the hierarchy, they want a manager, not forever, but they want a long-term manager. And they already failed at that with Potter. I think they will be even more hesitant to pull the plug on the next one than they were on this one. And if then they don't choose for that to be Pochettino, I'm just so concerned how long that's gonna last. And like I say, I'm not as against Pochettino as Pisces. Part of it is for me because he was at Spurs. That certainly plays a part, just because of how much he identified with Spurs. Now, if we appoint him, he could literally, in his appointment statement, solve half that problem. If he basically discredits anything like his relationship with Spurs in that first appointment, the fans will be much more on his side. But he won't do that because he does like Spurs. because he experienced his best time as a manager there. Why would he dislike them? He would be an idiot to do that. So he's not going to do that. So, and then I'm like, okay, like Charlie touched on, there's no guarantee we're going to make top 4 next season. I know Price is a bit more, convinced that we can and should, but there's no guarantee. But just look at the example of Price. A lot of fans won't be accepting that. And then how do you think the fans will react when the next Spurs guy isn't achieving their expectations? And that's why I'm like, as much as there are positive things about Poch, if the fans aren't backing it, and if the fans won't, I mean, we didn't even give Potter that. So what are we going to do to a ex-Spurs manager? Like the first rough patch, especially if it is more than a couple of games, how are they going to react? Like it's going to be what it was for Potter in March, already in September, right? If it doesn't start great. And then it's like, well, what are we going to do then, right? Like that's what I'm concerned about. Like if Poch is given the chance and is given the time, I think that taking the fans out of it, that can theoretically be a positive, especially if, like Charlie, you're like, okay, you do that for 2 seasons, improve on things a little bit, bring a structure that's a bit more, functioning slowly in place over those 2 years. The same structure we have now, but in terms of make it function properly. And then you get a different manager and then go from there. Sure, that idea would work, but I don't think the ownership want that. And I don't think the fans will allow that. And those are my main concerns. I'll let you guys respond to these super chats as well if you want to, of course. We have a super chat here again by Richard Grace. Appreciate it very, very much, bro. He says, we always say is the players, but the players leave and do just fine elsewhere. Issue is the club have been going on since before Hazard left, which is part of why he left. No manager wants to come into this. Well, see, that's the thing. It's only now that no manager wants to come into it. Until now, we seem to have no problem whatsoever to get any manager bar Guardiola. He's the only manager we've tried to get and failed at that I'm aware of. Everyone else, no, sure, Klopp is a great manager we didn't get, but we never tried to get Klopp as far as I'm aware. So it's only now a thing that managers all of a sudden are turning us down, Usually it's us turning the managers down, like we did with Enrique. Well, I'm like, in a way, I was like a bit harsh, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, what's kind of rated? If you don't back it, you don't back it. You get rid and take him out of the option. But now you look like a right bunch of clowns because you got rid of the second best option, in my opinion. And now the first best option has turned you down, and now you have neither left, which is just, it's just diabolical, man. Honestly, I know some guys try to see it more positively than I do, but I mean, when I see this from Julian Nagelsmann as well, that he apparently said to Sky Sports Germany, when asked on talks collapse with Chelsea for a head coach job, to cancel something, you have to commit to something. I mean, I don't know if he didn't understand the question or if the question wasn't asked properly, presumably in German, obviously, because no one said you cancelled anything. They just said you pulled out, right? So I don't understand. But it's another one where he's like, it's him that said no. It's not us that had some random, weird, made-up reasons. And that's the next thing that arguably annoys me about Chelsea right now. I mean, Pies, do you, I said this to you in a voice note earlier, but do you at all see, let me just find the right tweet again. Why is it not there? My days. Do you at all see what all the reports of like all our doubts? Do you see that as a PR brief from Chelsea like I do? Or do you think that there could be any sort of truth to that?
Sorry, what was that, bro?
Like I told you earlier, do you think the reaction from after this from Fabrizio came out, that it was basically just a PR brief? Do you agree with me on that? Or do you think any of these potential concerns could actually be reality?
Oh, it's such a difficult question because whenever I see especially covering reports a lot, I see, one bit of news comes out and then you hear a load of things come out from journalists and they talk about Chelsea's side and that sort of thing. It's like, it does seem like a little bit of a PR brief when it all sort of comes out at once. There was no there was none of this a few days ago, basically. Like, it was all just Nagelsmann is Tom candidate. Alex, bro, I said to Alex earlier in DM that he better get this article done for me about Pochettino because Chelsea might look to Alex next to be the coach. Like, it's getting that ridiculous.
Hey, maybe I prefer that to Poch, do you know what I mean?
But Yeah, no, I think when it
No,
comes
because he would buy literally all of Ligue 1, so I'm a little bit scared.
might be a good thing, to be fair. Got some
It
good
might
money.
be. Just
No, but
judging.
yeah, no, I do think some of it is PR. There's actually too many reports that I've tweeted off the top of my head to tell you which ones are PR. But I tell you that one from Miguel Delaney, who's probably not, the most reliable, but actually is on the screen right now. He's still, got some contacts. He says there, like, an expert opinion. And I did read a few weeks ago that from The Athletic, and I think Matt Law, they both said that Chelsea would be like reaching out to these people to like get their like feedback on basically the managers that have, so I don't know who they've asked, but I mean, yeah, it's just a difficult one because like the first part of this quote, I believe, or the first part of this report, then the second part, I'm like, where they like Nagelsmann just wants to work on a training ground. Like, well, that's literally not what he said at all when he was asked about like recruitment at Bayern Munich and stuff like that. Like, as I said, I tweeted out 2 days ago. He was like, we work together, we identify the targets together. I meet them face to face, that type of thing. Like, and he also said the club should be able to get the last word on a transfer instead of the manager, because often the player stays longer than the manager. And I thought, well, Chelsea will probably really like the fact that they get the last word and not the manager. So I thought Nagelsmann would be perfect. So, yeah, I don't know. As I said, there's been so many reports where, some of it I just believe it's PR and some I don't. I do believe that the truth of like, Chelsea have doubts over age and experience. Of course, he's not managed in the Premier League, and obviously he is a very young manager. But as I said, like, is that really that relevant nowadays? I mean, is that something to really put you off? Like, I don't know. It's a difficult one.
It is a difficult one. And, well, obviously you weren't here for the whole thing, but yeah, I think the reaction is like, oh, we didn't want him. It's just PR, Chelsea briefing media trying to make ourselves look a bit better. Because like this, we obviously look bad if it's like Nagelsmann turned us down. But I guess we don't know for sure, do we? The annoying part, like, as much as I understand what you're saying in terms of price, you might believe that first part of this, what we have on screen now. The thing that I have an issue with here is, like, it's 3 weeks into us talking to him. Like, they could have figured that out in the first 3 days. Like I say, Vivell has worked with Nagelsmann. Like, it's not like we approach someone who no one at the club has ever heard of, no one at the club has ever talked to, no one at the club has ever known, right? Like, if this is an issue, then first of all, they're not necessarily wrong. There are certainly similarities between them. But why did that apparently take you 3 weeks to figure out? And that's why I think it's purely PR brief. Because if this was the reality, they would have figured that out much, much sooner. It's like, that's how I view that one. I mean, I can get up another one. There's so many tweets, it's difficult. Yeah, I mean, that was the first one that I saw in terms of what I would class as a PR response from Chelsea. Chelsea aren't convinced of Nagelsmann after receiving mixed reports back on him. Again, this could be true, but the timing of releasing this just seems comical. I mean, the only thing I could maybe see is that we told Nagelsmann he weren't it anymore. But then somehow Fabrizio got wind of that side of this discussion before he got wind of the Chelsea side, and therefore he released the Nagelsmann side saying, I don't want it. And it actually came after Chelsea told him we have issues. That there is a small chance of that. And I could try to clutch at that small chance, but it just seems so small to me that I don't even want to cling on to it. I mean, do you see that at all as a possibility, Charlie, that, this has happened because Chelsea apparently weren't convinced and, heard certain mixed reports back on him and then decided against him, told him, and then he was nappy, and then somehow Fabrizio got wind of that. And
also, isn't this just hilarious? The fact that, like, if Chelsea have received mixed reports back on him, you're not going to receive perfect reports back on any manager unless they're Pep Guardiola.
From a club that's just sacked him.
Like, are you telling me that they wouldn't have put this out if they didn't, like, if, say, like I could perfectly imagine typing this tweet, Chelsea aren't convinced on Pochettino after receiving mixed reports back on him from his time at PSG. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, it's ridiculous. You're not going to receive perfect reports back on anyone. This is just so stupid. I'm sorry.
I don't disagree with you. But Charlie, do you think at all that it could have been a case of we told Nagelsmann kind of no, and then that came out first? Because otherwise, this is just oddly contradicting.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I think it's impossible to tell, really, isn't it? Because, like, from a Chelsea perspective, like, you're hearing that, Nagelsmann's the leading candidate, all the talk's been successful so far, and then it's almost like they had this ready to go in case of this situation happening. So it almost feels like it was like kind of too ready to go, rather, and like they were expecting it, rather than it kind of just being a shock out of nowhere. Because how quickly did those briefings come out? Like, rapidly.
That's what I mean.
I don't know how it works or anything, but I would look at that and think this must have been pre-ready, because as soon as it come out from Fabrizio saying that Nagelsmann had withdrawn from the race, Matt Law soon after confirmed it, and then you get this coming out pretty quickly. So I don't know if they're saving face or what the situation is, but it's kind of clear that obviously you've got to choose which side of the story you believe, because Chelsea are going to hold firm on their side, Nagelsmann's going to hold firm on his side. So, like, basically, we just kind of have to pick what we believe or what we think is the most likely thing, and that's quite difficult when you got this sort of conflicting reports. Because yes, Nagelsmann's got cons, like all the managers will. Yes, certain managers won't fit what Chelsea are looking for in every single box. They're not going to tick every single box. But yeah, I think I would more look at this as us trying to save face, just because you never want to admit that you've been rejected. And if Chelsea hadn't been rejected by Nagelsmann and they turned him down, then they would very much kind of be saying that, rather than waiting for him to say something and then deny it, basically.
Exactly. And when I hear that, and like, obviously it's a Matt Law report and whoever else reported it, so I guess this shortlist doesn't necessarily need to be factual, but again, we'll touch on that again later. But Vincent Kompany being on an apparent shortlist, but then we apparently have decided against Nagelsmann because there were concerns over age and experience, but Kompany is on your shortlist. Like, How much more do you want to contradict yourself? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Like, if you've got concerns about Nagelsmann of his age and his experience, well, all right, yes, he's a few years younger than Kompany, but he's got a lot more experience than him. So you would think, well, how's Kompany got to the quote unquote final four shortlist, which is now final three, when this is literally pretty much the first time his name's been linked with a job, really? Like, at least concretely, anyway. Like, yeah, there have been a few murmurings here and there, but you know what I mean? Like, suddenly we're at the final three, supposedly, and Kompany's got that far without really being a serious name throughout any of the process. So I don't really understand how that makes sense. And that statement there from Sky Sports News, if that's true, then that's totally contradictory to the Nagelsmann stuff, because, Kompany is the complete opposite, is exactly the same. He's young and he's not got a lot of experience.
Not exactly the same. He's way less experience.
Yeah, it's the point. He's way less experience, but he's done what, a year or two at Anderlecht and 1 year at Burnley?
And one of them, I think, was as player manager.
Yeah, he was player man. He didn't even do that well at Anderlecht. I mean, that's irrelevant, but he didn't do great there. Yes, obviously, his time he's done a phenomenal job at Burnley. The transformation from Burnley, from what they were under Dutch to what they are under Kompany, great job. But that doesn't suddenly qualify you after one great season in management to suddenly take one of the biggest jobs in football. It's like, Kompany could be a very good manager, could be a future Chelsea manager at some point. He needs another 2 or 3 years, maybe at Burnley, maybe somewhere else, to hone his craft a bit more.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, we have another super chat by Richard. Appreciate it very much. He says, do you think Todd, I assume, is overriding managers and not allowing them to actually make decisions on players and who they want, etc.? Much like Jerry Jones. I'll be honest, no idea who Jerry Jones is, but I still get what you're trying to say. Charlie, do you think that is the case? And do you think that could be part of why we decided against Enrique and why Nagelsmann decided against us, because we weren't willing to give them that freedom? Or do you think that's just an easy explanation to find? Because, now obviously it hasn't worked out in terms of with Nagelsmann, but I always said I don't think that the club are looking for a yes man. I think what the club are looking for is someone that shares their views, and they've obviously hired a lot of people who hopefully they have similar views in terms of Vivo and with Stanley and Laurenz Stewart and these guys, right? Joe Shields as well. In an ideal world, we'd obviously get a manager whose views on how to take the club forward would be very similar / the same as those 4 just mentioned. Plus, then I suppose Bowley, but Bowley and Iqbali's, view is probably, okay, let's make it successful. We heard some good things about, multi-club, this and that. And now we brought the football people in to know the exact detail of it. So I think it's more about aligning the view with, Paul Stanley, Joe Shields, Laurenz Stewart, and Christopher Vivell. I think more them, that matters more arguably than Bowley, because and maybe I'm naive in thinking that, but I don't think Bowley sits there and has this detailed plan thought out in his mind just because he's not in the matter of football closely enough to even have that, right? So that's what I doubt this, but do you doubt it as well, Charlie, or do you think this could be part of the situation and part of the issue?
I'm really not sure. It's a difficult one because, like, you very much look at it and like the reason why this football department was put in place is so that they can like form the basis of the decisions, feed the information back, and then obviously Bowley and Iqbali will ultimately have the final say on the decisions, but they'll be very well informed by the department that they've put together. So, your Win Stanleys, your Vivells, your Laurenz Stewarts and whatnot. And I'd like to think that they're not stupid enough to discount everything they've said, the face-to-face interviews, the data, whatever stuff they're using, and it comes back like unanimously, this guy fits the boxes, and they're going to be like, no, actually, we're going to overrule that. I would refuse to think that would be that stupid, because the whole reason that's in place is to make the decisions on their behalf, kind of thing. But I look, I think what is also important to note is that the mistakes that have been made were essentially made when Bowley was basically the sporting director, when there was no department below him. So I don't know. I mean, we don't know who advised Bowley to appoint Potter. We've got absolutely no idea. We have no idea. True. We don't know who that was, because there was no one really in place at the club at the time that we were made aware of in a senior position that wasn't owner. There was no one there. So
maybe it was what's his face, bloody James Corden.
Maybe, but we don't know. Like, we don't know if who took that decision, who advised Potter or who advised Bowley to go for Potter. So we're looking at the bad decisions that have been made this season, and they've all come when there's been no footballing department in place, and Bowley's been the acting sporting director. So you'd like to think that, and this is a bit off topic, so I will get back to it in a sec, but you'd like to think that now that the footballing department's in place, you would like to think there's going to be less bad decisions going forward. And let's make no mistake about it. We're not going to there's going to be more decisions that are wrong, but you'd like to think they're going to be less frequent, and they're not going to be as major as the ones we've got wrong so far. That's surely the whole point. But in terms of Bowley overriding managers, I'm not sure. I think one thing's clear is that they want a collaborative approach. Now, I don't think that shouldn't be mistaken for wanting a yes man. That should be looked at, and is, in my opinion, and if people disagree, not a problem. But they want everyone to be pulling in the same direction. They don't want someone that's going to agree on absolutely everything they say. You've got in any hierarchy, you've got to have differences of opinion. You've got to be able to challenge people and whatnot. So I don't think Bowley's someone that is looking for someone that's just going to agree with everything he says. They want someone that's going to pull in the same direction. It's going to be a collaborative approach. They want someone that's not just focused on the training pitch, which is what Tuchel wanted to do. They want them to be involved in other things as well. And so,
which I don't mind personally.
No, I don't mind either,
because Chelsea have, since Jose Mourinho's second spell, that's where the last time we had a so-called manager. Ever since then, every manager since then has been a head coach. Yeah. And now it's apparently, maybe, we want something that's more taught in the region of a manager again, rather than a head coach. But personally, I think that's, if anything, a little bit of a good thing, because then I feel like there is less likely to be things happening that the manager is not happy with, and then that leading to fallouts. But it's also difficult to say. I mean, you say that you're expecting less and less mistakes. I don't disagree in general, but then I'm like, I'm still not fully sold on it. I know Pies isn't a big fan of like how much money Mount wants and stuff, but when I see certain amounts of money that some of our players are on, and then we're like super stingy in terms of not super stingy, maybe it's an exaggeration, but not at all willing to meet Mason Mount's wage demands. I'm like, we constantly complain about, the manager just doesn't get it, the player don't get it, they don't get what it means to be Chelsea. We have so much issue with Pochettino being ex-Spurs. but then half our fan base doesn't even want us to keep someone like Mason Mount who does get it. He might not be good enough in your opinion. That's totally fair. But somewhere a line has to be drawn. But regardless of that, Pies, do you think Richard has a point? Do you think that could be the case, or do you agree with Charlie? Oh, hello.
Oh, I think it's combusted.
It sounded like you unmuted yourself and then muted yourself again. So I think you're on mute.
Oh yeah, sorry, my fucking internet's playing up a little bit. Is it just answering the super chat?
Essentially, yeah. What do you think about
it? I guess that's Todd.
Yeah, Todd.
Ryan the manager. I mean, I have had this thought in the past, to be fair. Yeah, I do agree with that a little bit.
But then why hire all these Laurenz Stewards and Paul Stanleys and Christopher Vivels and why hire these people then?
Yeah.
We could have because we could have had the same structure in general in place as we had before, where you have the owners, maybe get someone that will do a job like Mourinho did, and then you can have way more control. But the more people you employ, the more difficult that kind of control is possible to have. No, so
I just get the feeling that like Todd and Bedad, they just don't want to be like. They don't. I just get the feeling. Maybe this is like a harsh characterization, but I just get a feeling like they don't want to be told like what's what, like what's right and wrong. Like I feel like they're very strong in terms of what their vision is, what their ideas are on the players specifically. I think they've brought these guys in for more like the longer term when they step away. And I think the reason why I do believe they're still like having so much power is because I don't think they fully trust the people that they've brought in yet, because they haven't worked long enough with them to see that like they like know it's working or whatever. Kind of like what you said to me, and my counterpoint was like, well, you interviewed them, why hire them if you don't trust them? But you do have a point in terms of like, just because you hire someone like and speak to them, like you need to be able to trust them before you kind of leave it. So I do see him interfering too much, him and Bedad as well, because we must also mention Bedad. But
but can I jump in there in terms of what you were saying there? Because obviously we had that discussion. I said that in terms of, it makes sense that they would still have some sort of, controlling look over it. But I think there's a difference between making sure everything goes the way they want it to and overriding decisions. Because in my opinion, those are two very different things. Because they hired people who, yes, they don't know them so well yet that they maybe let them just do their thing on their own. But they still hired people whose views should be very similar, if not the same, as their own in terms of how to take the club forward. So it wouldn't even really make sense for there to be decisions where you need to overrule them. So that's what, you get what I'm trying to say, guys. I think it's different to say making sure they do a good job and overruling them are two different things.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. I hate this sort of like debate and question because it's so like, you either say it one way or another, like you either believe they're doing it or you don't kind of thing. And, if you do characterize them as, overruling, they've got all this power, they've made the wrong appointments, like, that might not be the case. Like, we don't really know unless we're in there, like in that boardroom, seeing like, unless we had a camera in there and like hearing the conversations, we don't really know. But like, things like Mason Mount being, left out of starting 11s, people have said, oh, is he really injured? That type thing, there's definitely a debate to be had there. We saw similar with Christensen in terms of how he got dropped for not signing the contract. That may be true. There may be a higher influence that,
didn't Tuchel
came
make it
from...
sound like that was a Tuchel decision? Right, that like dropping Christensen? Then?
No, I think it was a higher ups decision. I think the same could be happening here. Like, I feel like
Tuchel in his press conference at the time made it sound like he decided, but you could be right that it was higher up. That is obviously true.
No, yeah, I think it was higher up Mourinho, and because whoever handling these contracts, like I think actually Paul and Stanley was apparently like handed over this whole Mount contract negotiation. Maybe they've decided, right, well, he's not part of our future plans at the moment, so he doesn't start type thing. That could be true. But again, he may just be injured and can't be able to start. I don't know. Like that, I think it's circumstantial. Like you can have the debate, about Aubameyang, like Aubameyang not coming on or starting against Brighton was extremely weird to me, and some of his treatment. But again, like these managers, Graham Potter and Frank Lampard, maybe just doesn't train well. Maybe they don't rate him. Like you can make like a counterpoint for each debate, I think, and I think each debate is circumstantial, whether it's transfers and that type of thing. Like
the one thing I would say, up against Arsenal first minute.
You joking?
No.
What the hell?
That's too early. Too early.
Too early. But yeah, one thing I am confused about, and maybe we'll talk about this in future, detail if he doesn't get more games. But I think the Madueke signing is extremely weird for me because at the time, I think it was reported that, it was Christopher Vell that really liked him. And obviously, he hasn't really played that much. And it just seems like I don't know how much influence Christopher Vell actually has, because what I find weird is that, if it's true he was allowed to make big decisions on a transfer like that, which was like upwards of £30 million, why is he not having a big say in like the future of the manager? Because like he was actually a part of like the whole managerial changes in the Red Bull system. So it's extremely confusing because, again, I said this to you earlier, Laurenz, is like when Lawrence Stewart was, I think, like when the first like initial news that he was joining came out, I'm pretty sure I read that his like specialty was going to be in like the multi-club model thing. He wasn't going to be, that sort of like impactful. He's now the bloody co-sporting director. It's like, what's going on, man? I don't understand.
I mean, I guess it could have just been that the reporters were wrong in assuming that's the role he would take, because it was never the club telling us that he would take the multi-club. In charge, it was never the club that told us he would take charge of that side of the thing. So I guess the reporters could have just been wrong. But before we continue with that, let's take it super drastic for a second. Charlie, you know how we protested the Ricketts and everything? Did we, as fans to some extent, also make a mistake in who we believed in or who we accepted as owners? Or do you still think Bowley and co were the best choice from what we had at the time? Because obviously there's a few people, and Melinda put it in a chat earlier, like, in terms of, we were wrong type thing. And, why the protest here, Lee Taylor saying this, like, protest essentially. There's no point protesting now because they're legally obliged to not sell us until 2032. So that kind of is pointless. Unless there are some sort of clauses, which we don't know of, but we were told quite categorically that we wouldn't be able to. So now, nearly a year into it, I mean, the Ricketts protest was about a year ago, right? So did we make a mistake on that? Is it understandable errors that have happened in the first year? Is it, well, we thought they would be better than they have turned out? Or like, have they lied to us? Like, how do you see it? Because when I saw, like, I mean, sorry to before you start going there, Pice, that's what me and Pice got to about this whole, let them do their thing. Because Bowley was sat there in an interview saying, like, well, the way you run a football team is, or a sports team, is you hire the people that know what they're doing, and then you just let them do their thing because they know what they're doing. But now, obviously, my argument was like, well, yeah, but give them a little bit longer. I'm sure they will eventually do that. But so far, he's not doing that at all. I mean, they're in the dressing room after every single game. They apparently even turn up before the game, when the dressing room is supposed to be almost a sacred place where no one but the staff and the team get into. Where you're like, so where is this idea gone that you're just going to let the people do their thing that know what to do? So was it a mistake in hindsight, Bowley, or do we still need to wait to have a final judgment on that?
It's so early to start saying things like that. I know, like, football fans can be very reactionary, and it's like it stirs up emotions in people and whatnot. Yeah, but like, we can't be writing these people off after what, like 2 transfer windows. And all right, yeah, they've got managerial decision wrong, but let's not pretend that when new owners come in, they get everything right straight away. There's always going to be mistakes. Yes, these are mistakes.
How did it go with Roman? It didn't take. There was obviously, excuse me, the scene in England was very different. There was very few clubs with a lot of money, so it was a bit easy to stay close to the top. But we're not just behind the top 6; we're 11th, with every chance to drop down to 15th. By the end of the season.
Of course. But I don't think that's not so. I don't think that's solely an owner thing, though.
Sorry to interrupt you again. we are also not in debt now, Lee. So this is about the 15th time you've commented this. I get it. You think that's good. You're right. Everything great. But we're not in debt now either. So, that doesn't really mean anything, you saying that. Sorry, Charlie. You got.
Yeah, but look, I think it's too early to decide. Like, Bowley can, like, obviously within football, it's obviously very different to baseball, basketball, and whatnot. But he knows how to run a sports team well. Based on the evidence of the Dodgers, and I think is he part owner Lakers as well, or something to do with the Lakers. But I think he knows how to run a sports team well. No problem. Football's very different, and I think he's finding out that actually it's perhaps not as easy as he thought it was going to be. And there was a lot of work to do when he first come in. That's not an easy job, whoever you are. Like, I think maybe you have to cut a bit of slack in how difficult the circumstances were that he came in when you're succeeding someone like Roman, who's been such a great owner for the club and has given us all these memories, a large majority of the fan base. But I think two things are really important for me. The ambition's there. They're going to give managers as much time as they possibly can. We saw that with Potter. They literally gave him until it was kind of physically not possible to carry on anymore. They're clearly going to give managers time. They're clearly going to invest, and they're clearly going to back managers with players, and they're prepared to overhaul the squad, which is what they've largely done so far. Yes, some of the decisions have not been good. I think the timing really as well. Like, I've got no problem with Tuchel being sacked in terms of if you've got a set criteria as an owner when you're coming in, and the guy in charge is not aligning with your views, then they have to go, whether we like it or not. That's what has to happen. So my issue with that is a timing. Should have done it pre-season. Should have given him to the World Cup rather than do it September. I then look at it and think, if possibly they wanted it to work, it didn't work. Waited way too long to get rid of him. Don't get rid of him with 10 games left. It's kind of pointless. So my issue though is the timing of the decisions that they've made. Not necessarily these are the wrong decisions, but the timing of them has caused us huge problems. But I think it is early. Like, it really is. Like, they're not solely responsible for how we're performing on the pitch. They're not managing the team. They're not picking the team. I know some people might like,
but they are solely responsible for who our next manager is going to be, and our number one choice turned us down.
And but is that their fault? Like, do you know what I mean? How involved are they in that process?
You could argue everything is their fault in a way. I mean, they changed the entire medical staff. You could even claim that the whole injury crisis was their fault. Like, we don't know that for sure, but you could most certainly make an argument for it.
I mean, we don't know. I just think, like, it's easy to blame the owners. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's more to it than just the owners.
But who else do you blame? Right? Because we already got rid of Potter.
I know, but
we changed our entire squad in the last 12, half the squad in the last 12 months. So either all the players we signed are bad, or it's not the players' fault. Do you know what I mean?
I think like we can look at this, and it's like this has been coming for years. We've been on a decline since 2017, like gradually on a decline for the last 5 years or whatever it is, 5-6 years. And I'm not saying blaming the owners is a cop out necessarily, but it's an easy thing to take rather than looking at the big picture. Like, the decisions, I'm not slagging Roman off, but let's not pretend that Roman and Mourinho and co didn't make bad decisions. They did. That 2021 transfer window after we won the Champions League, absolute disgrace, absolutely disgraceful. The recruitment had been poor for years and years and years. So let's not pretend we're suddenly in this position because Bowley's come in and we've suddenly gone to shit. We've been going to shit for years. So this is not on all of them. Some of the decisions we made under Roman,
it was shit that wasn't 11th.
No, it wasn't. No, we weren't 11th. No, for sure. But I mean, I'm talking in terms of like how the squad was left, and like, I mean, I'd like to think that I'm not blaming, like, this is not like, oh, this is so and so's fault or whatever. But let's be objective here. These problems aren't all Bowley's problems. There were a number of issues that were caused under Roman's regime. And that's not me hating on Roman, or that's not me blaming him. That's the reality of the situation. The recruitment was fucking awful for the last 4 or 5 years. But also, all right, the Premier League's different now. The strength and depth's massively different. Back then you had a very much, or maybe not the last few years, but certainly for the bulk of Roman's reign, you had a very established top four. and it was very rare that any other teams broke into it. Your top four was always Arsenal, Arsenal, United, Chelsea, City, Liverpool, or whatever it was. There was always
Liverpool, and then until it became City.
Yeah, there was always a kind of a set top four. It's a lot more competitive now. Like, you've got to be. You can't just. You've got to be objective on these things. You've got to look at the whole picture. We haven't suddenly turned shit because we've got Bowley's come in. This has been a gradual decline over a number of years. And this has been waiting to happen for a long time now. We've been due something like this for a long time because of all the short-term decisions we've made. They eventually catch up with you. And we're kind of paying a price for that now. And yes, of course, we shouldn't be doing this badly with the money we've spent and the players we've got. But for whatever reason, something isn't marrying up, whether it's the message from the training ground, whether it's coming from the top. You can look at it now, and the tone from the top to the bottom, everything's a bit of a mess, really. But I think it's far too early to say that these guys are crap. They're not the right choice. It's going to be a disaster. Whether we like it or not, they're here for 10 years. So
exactly. Yeah.
Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Yes, I think they've got things wrong. Everyone gets things wrong. Like, everyone in the chat's going to get things wrong.
It's about learning from mistakes, and that's the part that worries me.
That's the key.
There's been a few examples this season where, to me, it looks like they haven't, and that's what worries me.
Yeah, and that's a valid point. Everyone's going to make mistakes, but the important thing is, have you learned from these mistakes? Will you learn from these mistakes? And I think it's a very valid argument to have that perhaps they look like, at the moment, they perhaps haven't learned from their mistakes, and that is a valid criticism, and that is a valid argument. That's a valid concern to have, for sure. But this idea that they're like ruining the football club, they've run us into the ground, blah, that for me is a nonsense, and I completely disagree with that. But yes, they look, things aren't going well. They've made mistakes, but if they can show they've learned from those mistakes, then no problem for me. But it's too early after 1 year in ridiculous circumstances to just cast them as shit owners, in my opinion. And if it comes out and it turns out they've not had a good reign, no problem. I hold my hands up. I'm wrong. But I just think at this point in time, it's too early to say that they're shit, basically, is what I'm saying.
I hear it. All right. Before I ask Pies a similar question, Bertram, thank you for the super chat. He explains, just informing, Todd isn't the main owner of the Dodgers or the Lakers. He's a minority partner. Guggenheim are the main guys for the Dodgers. Todd is not the brain. The thing is, that same actually applies to Chelsea as well. He's also only a minority partner here, with the majority stakeholder
Egbali,
Clear Lake Capital, and therefore Bedard Egbali. It has also been because Bowley is the front man and has been, the kind of the face of it. The media often always talk about Bowley, but it's kind of, at least it's come across that way, that most of the things that have happened are always like where Bedard Egbali and Bowley kind of run around as a pair of two everywhere anyway. So it's like, who knows who is the main guy making calls? Maybe it's them together. Maybe it's one of them. Who knows? We don't know for sure, I guess. But thank you for the super chat, and thank you for adding that, Bertram. Pies, do you think, in hindsight, we've made a mistake with Bowley? We've made a mistake as fans where who we chose to protest against, who we chose to not protest against. There is one argument, obviously, that has been made by a few people that are, not fans of Bowley, is that, I forget what his name was, but one of the potential buyers already had a stake in Atalanta Bergamo. Now, of course, that would have brought its own issues with it because they were in Europe and he probably would have had to get rid of those stakes. But the difference that there would have then been is that that man would have already had experience at running a European sports club, a football club. But then again, he only took it over in January, like 5 months before Bowley took over us. So it's not like there was much time to be learning, to be getting used to things that drastically. Was it Broughton that guy was? I can't remember which one it was.
Martin Broughton, wasn't it?
Was it? There you go.
No, the guy that had the stake in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Oh, Pagliuca.
That was
Pagliuca. That's him. Yeah, Pagliuca, I meant. So I'm like, I guess you could argue he at least would have had an idea of football a bit more purely because he already was part of owning a football club. But again, it's only 4 or 5 months before Bowley bought us. So how much would that have changed? Especially when he would have had to get rid of those. As I want to say, yeah, he would have never been able to buy us anyway. But he made the shortlist, right? Like the 4 people shortlist that, I forgot what the bank was called that did the whole thing.
Rain Group.
Oh, Rain Group, yeah, exactly. They were in the 4-man shortlist, so I'm sure they would have found a way for Pagliuca to make it happen. But Pice, do you agree with Charlie where it's like it's just too soon just to call that, or do you think we maybe have made mistakes, or can you still categorically say that we haven't and they were still the best choice from the choices we were given?
So was it a mistake, is what you're asking?
Yeah.
No, I
Basically,
don't
Bowley
think so.
coming in and us protesting Ricketts, but not Bowley.
No. It's absolutely not a mistake. I would much rather have these guys than any of the other bidders. They sounded absolutely horrific. I mean, the Ricketts, just go and see how they run Chicago Cubs. Their fans absolutely despise them. Yeah, they're utter clowns. I wouldn't have want them in charge. They came with Ken Griffin, who had a lot of money, but again, they don't really have the. I just don't. I didn't like them at all. I didn't like their backgrounds and the whole. Obviously, they had the the racism scandal and that type of thing. They were absolute no goes for me. Stephen Pagliuca. I mean, I don't know. Did he have the wealth behind him? Oh my God! What the fuck? Yeah, Stephen Pagliuca. Did he have the wealth behind him? Did he have the the ideas, the ambition? I don't know. And Sir Martin Broughton just had way too many investors for me. He was, for me, just very much past it. I don't think he aligns with the modern football approach. He definitely wouldn't have made the hierarchy changes that I think were needed. And I think Todd Bowley and Bedad have done a very good job overall, but they're just making the key decisions like the managerial stuff seemingly wrong so far. And, let's hope that, longer term, the hierarchy in terms of Stuart, Vivell, Winstanley, let's hope that they actually do, some good for the club and we get to learn more about them because, for us to fully judge them. But yeah, no, I wouldn't want any of the other guys, to be honest, especially not
including
Nick
Jim
Campbell or
Ratcliffe.
any of those guys.
Including Jim Ratcliffe.
Well, I think him bidding for United and being a United fan says it all for me.
Yeah, exactly. That's basically what I was trying to get you to say. We touched on the shortlist many a times in this stream. Pochettino now tops this shortlist. Someone said it in the chat, by the way. If he does, I'm all for Pochettino because we can get rid of Pochettino in 12 months and have Harry Kane down on a 5-year contract. So if he were to make that happen, sure, that changes everything. But he won't because Daniel Levy is still owning Tottenham Football Club and they will still not sell Harry Kane to us. They will still not sell anybody to us. But anyway, shortlist, Pochettino, top of this shortlist, Kompany, and an unnamed candidate. Pice, I'm not sure if you might have heard anything in the background. Even if you did, you probably wouldn't be able to say that publicly anyway. What do we think? Because obviously we would maybe think it could be someone like Amorim or it could be someone like maybe De Zerbi or something. But we've heard of those names already. So why would it be an unnamed candidate? That's the part I find weird. And Arsenal got one back, so it's 2-1 now. So Pice, I'll ask you that first. What do you make of this unnamed candidate situation?
I think it's probably someone not that exciting, to be honest, unless there's just a massive
someone you genuinely think we haven't been we don't know that we've been linked with, or someone that we have been linked with, we just don't know he's in the shortlist.
Yeah, no, I think it's someone we have been linked with. I personally have had a guess. I think it might be Gallardo from
River Plate. I feel like surely Amorim, no?
No,
because we already know who he is. We've already spoken to him.
Well, we've also apparently, according to Argentinian reports, spoken to Gallardo as well. So,
no, I don't know.
I'm just thinking Amorim because he's like the Portuguese Potter, really, isn't he? So, they got Potter, so I wouldn't be shocked if they wanted Amorim. Yeah, I'm not saying they're characteristically similar, but in terms of how their careers come up and how they're viewed in the football world, Potter was kind of the English version of what.
It's either a case of it's one of the guys we already know about, but they're not allowed to say yet for some reason, because every source is briefing. They seem to know there's this unnamed candidate, but is that unnamed in just terms of they can't name it yet, or is it just is it? I don't know. It's interesting because why wouldn't you be able to say maybe there is some negotiations going on with this person, and if it doesn't amount to anything, maybe they'll be able to say. But reporting is weird. Sometimes you can only say stuff at certain times. So it'll be interesting to see when that name comes out. But personally, I think the fact that like Pochettino, tops the shortlist, I can't imagine it's someone that exciting, to be honest with you, especially if Vincent Kompany is the guy in the second.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we don't know if Kompany's second or third behind it. Do
you think it could be Glasner?
A few people in the chat with Glasner, Brendan Rodgers, Conte,
Jose.
I mean, I'd hate all of them, but
Conte, could you imagine?
Hey, these Chelsea fans think it's a good idea.
No, mate. They're not Chelsea fans.
Charlie, who do you, obviously purely speculating on our part, but who do you think this unnamed candidate could be?
Mate, I suspect the most obvious choice, I think it could be Oliver Glasner. But I think that's a distinct possibility.
But they've mentioned him. Why would they now?
I did hear.
Maybe I don't know.
When Graham Potter was like not sacked, but there was rumors. I did hear that the ownership did like Thomas Frank, but I don't know if that'll be if he's.
I can tell you one thing for damn sure right now: Thomas Frank will tell us to go f off if we even approach him. Yeah. The way the guy seems, he has absolutely no love for what we are doing to football right now. In his opinion, and the majority of people's outside of Chelsea opinion,
there wasn't.
He hates us, I assume.
Yeah,
I could be wrong. Frank, I assume that.
The other one,
maybe Jose. No one's mentioned Jose yet.
The other one I got told back then was the Braga manager, but that was supposedly going to be an interim option. I think his name's Arthur George, but yeah, I don't know. I also think it could be someone like Xabi Alonso. I mean, he's been mentioned quite a bit.
Oh yeah, it could be him.
Yeah.
Could be. It's a tough
but
one,
again, man. He's not got a lot of experience.
Well, he's got none. He's not even got a season yet. Like, do you know what I mean? It's difficult. I know, like Charlie has, to some extent, and a few people in the chat as well, have kind of lightened me a little bit to the Poch idea. I still have my issues with it because I'm like, we won't like him that much. As soon as it goes bad, it will be toxic again. I would love it if we could have a period at Chelsea where it's not toxic. I don't think it's going to happen, but I would love it. And I just think if you get someone like Poch, you're already guaranteed from day one you don't have that chance, And a new manager, it might get toxic eventually, but it might be good from the start. With Poch, from day one it's going to be toxic, and that's not fun. I mean, people are mentioning a few other people, like obviously Xabi Alonso, Jose Mourinho, Jesse Marsh, my days. Who else was I just thinking about? No, I forgot again. My problem was, especially when I was thinking about this today after Nagelsmann news came out, I'm like, I don't even know who I want now.
Well, would you rather have Amorim or Poch?
I don't know, bro. I don't know. I don't know if I believe in any of them. Like I could get behind Nagelsmann and Enrique, and now it's not going to be either of them, and I'm kind of just very disappointed by that.
The way this has gone, do we really think like that Nagelsmann and Enrique both fully dead? Do we think there's any chance that maybe with how this has gone, they could suddenly reappear again?
I mean, it depends on what they told Enrique, obviously. If it was only the media saying we don't want Enrique, they could go to Enrique saying, no, the media was lying, it's not true. So they could do that unless they told him to his face, we're not buying it, or we're not about it. I don't know. I'm even thinking like, would just bring me Jose back? At least it would feel like Chelsea again then. It certainly wouldn't feel like fucking Chelsea if we got Mauricio Pochettino. That's for damn flipping sure. Do you know what I mean? But let's quickly talk about Vincent Kompany. I know we touched on it earlier already, but the Kompany one is the most baffling one to me. Again, he's done a good job at Burnley, but how can he be in the race? How can he be mentioned? Like,
I don't
know.
Tony,
like how?
It's a strange one. Like, I've got no problem with like him being on a long list, or like him being a manager that they admire or whatever, and maybe with a view to the future. But I'm struggling to connect how he's suddenly just seemingly come from nowhere to being, if what we're reading is correct, being in the final three. I don't understand how that's happened.
You know what it is? Todd Bowley's trying this Arteta arc again with the Pep disciples. He wants the Arteta, the guy who's learned under Pep.
Jesus, is that how recent's that? 3
It was today in the afternoon from Nathan. Yeah,
3-hour call. What the fuck?
I couldn't
are they
believe
talking
that when he
about?
tweeted. I was like, "What the fuck?" 3
And
hours.
3
this
hours.
is why the whole on Nagelsmann is too similar to Tuchel. If you had a 3-hour call with Kompany, I assume they had a 3-hour-ish call with Nagelsmann. Surely by the end of that call, you would have clocked that he had certain similarities to Thomas Tuchel, and if that was an issue, you should have decided that there and then.
I mean, could you imagine if it was Vincent Kompany?
Mate.
For me, he just feels like a future City manager though. Like with all his City connections, like
we're preparing.
Why the hell would he want to manage Chelsea?
Get a mid-table club before you get the top one.
Would he get the best out of Sterling? Maybe.
No one can.
Like, the thing is with Kompany, it's like, why would he?
QPR, they might get the best out of him.
Like I know Chelsea and City is not the biggest rivalry, but why the hell would he want to manage Chelsea? Like I just don't.
Would it even be the best choice for his career? Because I'm not saying that Kompany's similar to Lampard, but it's similar in the terms you've had 1 year in the Championship and you're going straight into a massive job. Is he actually ready for that? And could this kind of ruin his reputation that he's building? He's not ready for it.
No, of course he is.
But then, would you blame
he ready
him
to take Burnley into the Prem with his style of football? Because he might get destroyed trying to play that. Offensive football being in the Premier League is very different to offensive football being in the Championship.
Yeah, but I just don't know if he's ready for this caliber of job. Obviously, you wouldn't blame him for taking it. Of course, you wouldn't. But like, I don't think he's ready. He still needs to develop his game more. Like this would be, it would be exciting to a degree in terms of like, he's obviously an up and coming manager that could turn out to be good. But hey, this is a massive gamble. We need something as close to proven as possible, and Kompany's not.
No, he isn't. Pice, similar thoughts about Kompany?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no way we could appoint him. That would just be the most craziest thing of all time. I mean, you might as well stick with Frank Lampard, but Kompany's probably better than him, to be fair.
Oh yeah, Kompany's we cannot stick with Lampard under any circumstances.
I mean, who knows? Maybe the unknown candidate is bringing Potter back.
Is it unknown candidate Lampard permanently?
I'd rather Potter back than Lampard permanently, honestly. Emma Hayes, probably better than Lampard. So,
without doubt, better than Lampard.
Yeah. But again, I can only repeat when I say that every time. What if the women's team to deserve losing their manager to the men's team? Absolutely no chance. They deserve that happening to them.
But also, people seem to forget that it took Emma Hayes 3 years, I think, to win a trophy at Chelsea first.
But we were also shit before she turned up, to be fair to her.
Yeah, we were, but it did still take 3 years, and we're shit now. So,
Yep, no, it's true. It's true. By the way, everybody, if you want something to cheer yourself up, the women's team usually tend to do a lot better than the men's team, even though tomorrow they're playing Barcelona. But last time we played Barcelona, we lost 4-0 in the Champions League final, so that wasn't fun. But Chelsea ladies are playing Barcelona in the Champions League semi-final at Stamford Bridge tomorrow in the afternoon. Obviously, if you're in London and you don't, and nothing better to do, go to the game, please. Support the ladies. Because, I mean, let's at least have half of our club be successful, shall we? That would be nice. But yeah, I guess we round this one out in a second and just finish it off by another kind of extra bit that Fabrizio said about Mauricio. He said more on Mauricio Pochettino. Contacts are ongoing with Chelsea after initial approach as reported yesterday. He's on the list for sure. Poch was already contender for the job last summer to replace Tuchel. He was in talks with Chelsea board. No decision made yet. Pies, at this point, do you expect it to end up being Poch, or do you at all see? Because I mean, Lee Taylor says this. What if Poch turns us down? Or do you think the fact that we already spoke to Poch last summer and now spoke to him again, and he seemingly has no issue, he's unlikely to turn us down? The only problem is, why would he want us after we told him now we'd rather Potter, mate, last summer? Like, if I'm him, and last summer I was talking to Chelsea, and then they decided against me and for Potter, and now 8-9 months later, they got rid of Potter. Their first choice, as at least I assume he will have his piece of information as well, probably would have heard that our ideal choice might have been Nagelsmann. All of a sudden, Nagelsmann says no, and now we coming to him. Like, does he even want that? But do you think it's going to end up being him now from this point, Pice? But do you see at all a chance that he tells us to go do one? And it's like, why would I?
No, no, I think he would accept the job, to be honest. I think he wants to work back in England. And I mean, clearly the whole Chelsea rivalry isn't too big of an issue for him, because if he's had this many talks and, he's on the shortlist, clearly he's open to taking the job. So, yeah, no,
I mean, Nagelsmann was on the shortlist until today, so.
True. Yeah, I mean, it could be, a situation where Chelsea get to the final round of talks and they don't agree on something with Poch, and then it just ends. Hopefully that happens, but I've just had this feeling all along that just in terms of just him as a character, like him as a fit with our young squad, just seemed too obvious to me all along. But yeah, I just tried to not speak it into existence.
Hey, you tried. We appreciate you trying. But yeah, Sammy Mockball obviously said it's understood Pochettino does not view Chelsea the same way as Arsenal in terms of rivalry with Tottenham. But
how can that even be a possibility when he was involved in Battle of the Bridge? Like, what?
I mean, for them, this was probably more to do with the league than with us, but that's another issue. I mean, obviously, I don't know Tottenham that well in terms of the how their diehard fans think. I know a few Spurs fans, but I think other than one, none of them are English. So, I'm not sure about in terms of them knowing about the culture. But, I mean, we certainly hate Tottenham that way. They might not hate us that way because they've got Arsenal in North London. But isn't that an issue in and of itself, Charlie? If Poch in his mind doesn't take the Chelsea-Tottenham rivalry seriously, isn't that in itself already something that the Chelsea fans are going to have an issue with?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's that big a deal. It's not the same as the Arsenal-Tottenham rivalry. It's not. So I think this doesn't mean that he doesn't view it as a rivalry. All it's saying is he just doesn't view it in the same way as the Arsenal and Spurs rivalry, which is absolutely right, because it's not the same. So I don't have any problem with that. I don't think it's that deep at all, really, that quote. It's just purely saying that, the Chelsea-Spurs rivalry is not the same as the Arsenal-Tottenham one, which is exactly right.
There you go. Fair enough, Pice. Do you see it at all as that is a problem to start with already? That he doesn't see that rivalry as that big, but to us it is?
Yeah, I mean, this is my whole point. I just feel like if he gets appointed, these people that think it's not big of an issue, they're going to find out, man. Just wait for it. Just wait. I don't need to say any more. Like, it is what it is. These guys, these accounts keep tweeting at me, being toxic, saying, just shut up, support the new manager. Fair enough, but we'll wait and see when he hits a bad run, what the fans inside the ground do. Because no matter what you say, you cannot get away from the past. And the fact is, as you said, from day one, Chelsea fans will know he's the next Tottenham manager coming in off the back of our worst season ever. I mean, how about that for a bit of a lift up? Like, it will only end one way. I don't understand why these guys are trying to say it won't. Just wait. That's all I'm saying. Just wait. I hope he wins the league in the first season. That's probably, or you know what? Like, he could probably do certain things where the fans would be like, okay, fair enough. Like, we support him. Fans are fickle. If he comes out and says in the press conference, I hate Tottenham, I don't love Tottenham, I'll love that. But at the end of the day, you still can't,
And he won't say that either, let's be honest.
And would you believe that anyway? Like, I just can't get away from the past with him. It's just, how can you? It's lingering there. I feel like we should not go into the next manager having this lingering feeling. It's always going to be there, man. Like, even when he does well, the next time he does shit, it's going to be there. And the fan pressure, by the way, will be even more because he's an ex-Tottenham manager. It will be even more ramped up on him. Can he deal with that? I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, we chant before every game. It's not just some people don't like it because it's kind of ruined the liquidator a little bit. We chant, we hate Tottenham before every game, and now we're getting Tottenham most successful manager in the last 50 years.
And he said he wants to manage Tottenham again before he retires.
Did he? My days.
Yeah. Why are we bringing this guy to Chelsea?
Tice, I'll ask you what I just put in the chat, and not because it's serious and because I think it will be Jose, but I'm just intrigued to hear what people think. And to be fair, Jose also did go to Spurs. But if you had to pick between Poch and Jose, who would you pick, Tice?
Probably Jose, to be honest. I think actually in terms of, I think Jose would probably, Jose would win more trophies, but I actually think he would maybe cause more long-term damage than what Poch would if he was here, just in terms of like some of the young players. Like, I feel like Jose may make a few questionable decisions, and he definitely wouldn't,
The only thing with the young players is if he doesn't have anyone other than young players, how can he ruin young players?
I mean, that is a good point, to be fair. But
he only has young players other than Thiago Silva. Oh, he's like, no, I want to keep Aubameyang. Watch him do that. Do you know what I mean?
I know Jose's doing well at Roma, but I do think he's a bit outdated in terms of the top level. Like, I think one-off games, yeah, for sure. Like, could we win a cup final?
Should we have arguably replaced Tuchel with Jose to just bring us a year over until we fix our shit? Maybe we should have done that, and then maybe we could have hired Potter into a more stable situation, not setting him up to fail. But I mean, Charlie, I'm not even asking you the question because I know your answer. It was more of a joke poll, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry about it. But I want to finish it with this, and then I'll let you go as well, Charlie, because I know you need to head off. Alex, it was a while earlier, but it didn't really quite fit the conversation at the time. So sorry, Alex, you're probably not here anymore, but hey, maybe we'll see this later. What are we less successful at? Buying strikers or hiring managers, Charlie?
Well, is it strikers? Easy. Mate, we've had 2 good ones in the last 20-odd years. So we've had more than 2 good managers in the last 20-odd years. So that is an easy one.
I agree. I think that is a very easy one as well. But the fact that a neutral person, even if trying to take the piss a little bit, is asking a question shows where we are. Again, I can only go back to it. Like, yeah, if I have to be forced to warm to it a little bit, I'm sure I can find positives about Poch, but I'm like, all right, let's give it a go then. But fact of the matter is, the most disappointing thing to me about today is the fact that Nagelsmann turned us down, because that just stings in terms of where our club is at the moment. Now, it might be in a different situation totally in 2 years' time. And we might be back to being able to get no matter who we want, when we want them. Maybe. But as of right now, that's not the case. And the painful thing about it is that it took them less than a year to get us to this point. And that's, as much as this isn't all their fault, the old ownership never brought us this far. I'll say as straight up and as simply as it is. And it's true. Like, people know I've had my criticisms of Thomas Tuchel. People knew I wasn't like the most sad when we got rid of him, even if and to this day think the timing with it was absolutely dreadful. But to sack Thomas Tuchel, to then get Potter, sack him as well, pay 21 million to Brighton first, then 13 million to pay him back out. So pay 35 million odd to get Graham Potter, then have him gone, and now end up with Pochettino when we had Tuchel. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I'm not sure how much worse a first year in charge of Chelsea could have gone. Like, what, and I'm not saying that they necessarily, but like, what could have gone worse? Like, sure, we could get relegated, but they took us as close to as possible. There's still a chance we get relegated now, and they ain't stopping it. Do you know what I mean? They ain't stopping it. Oh, nice. Quick answer from your end as well. Buying strikers were certainly worse out than hiring managers, yeah?
Oh, yeah, I mean, fucking hell, mate. Our strikers, I'm shitting myself to see who we buy in the summer, because I know we're probably going to spend big on a striker. And I don't even think the market's that good right now. So, even if you buy Osimhen, we've talked about some of his, potential sort of, bullet points in terms of, flopping in the Premier League. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see when we actually finally get a fucking striker choice right. That's why I want someone like Ivan Toney, because I can just, it would just be so typical Chelsea if, like, out of all these big signings we made, if a Brentford striker ended up being the best, next best Chelsea striker.
Well, mate, we do Tony watch on Wednesday night, isn't it?
Yeah, very true. And also, I just want to say, apparently Romeo Lavia is playing insane right now. I want that guy next season. He's such a baller.
But I can only ever say the same thing again. I know Poch, I guess, is known to be working with young players, but we will never win anything if we have a squad of under 25-year-olds. I hope people are aware of that.
Also, we will eventually.
But by then they won't all be under 25 anymore. It's the thing.
It's definitely paramount importance that we get at least a couple of leaders this summer. But again, like when you're like scouring the market, try and name me 5. Like, can you name me 5 people right now that you think would be, good leaders, like good experience? Like, a lot of the actual leaders are younger now. It's crazy. Like, people want Declan Rice. What is he, like 22? Everyone calls him a leader.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't even I don't even just mean leader. I actually do mean experience, because dealing with pressure needs experience. And Chelsea is a very high pressure environment. And if you don't have anyone soaking up the pressure for you, you're going to struggle. And with how our owners are running this football club, with how we are running the management, who's going to soak up anyone's pressure? Potter tried his best by, putting himself into the firing line on every occasion. Even that didn't help. Do you know what I mean? Like, leaders is absolutely fair point, Pies, but you also need a little bit of experience. The problem is the few experienced players that we do have are the worst ones. Sterling and that. My main example, because the other ones ain't playing anyway. Aspie ain't playing, Aubameyang ain't playing. But yeah, Rice I think is 24 by this point, actually. But yeah, what can I say? It's just painful, man. It's just like, honestly, I watched your fan cam after Brighton, Charlie, and it really hit home, because it was just depressing. It was really depressing.
That was a tough day.
Yeah, it was that, and like you said, like, it doesn't matter whether you support a big team or a small team. Very few teams lose as many games as we have this season. Not many.
Mate, no teams lost more than us in the Premier League since October 16th. We've lost the most games. So
Exactly.
Not many teams are losing more than us this season.
You know how bad that is? What depressing season. And then let's just top it off with more and more bad news everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, I have never told you today, but please do subscribe if you haven't already. That'd be massively appreciated. Hit that like button. Please do subscribe to Charlie.
Can I just say, sorry, one more thing, Laurenz. Sport 1 in Germany have just reported that Julian Nagelsmann personally informed Chelsea on Thursday, which is today, the coaching job at Stamford Bridge.
Yesterday, wasn't it?
Yesterday, sorry, is out of the question for him. He wants a project that stands on solid ground. He didn't have this feeling after talking to Chelsea bosses.
So he binned us. Fair.
Apparently.
Did you tweet that as well?
Not yet, but I can link it to you. Inform Chelsea. I don't know what stand on solid ground means, but
I guess
it's in German. Okay, interesting. Okay. So I can at least try to see if I can translate it better than Twitter can, or if Twitter's done a good job anyway. So let me get. I think
they're taking the translate thing off Twitter.
I've still got it.
Oh, mate. Yeah. Oh, mate.
I think it sometimes it just bugs, and sometimes it works.
Oh, well, yeah, fair.
No, they've actually the auto translation is actually pretty solid. It's literally, told us on Thursday that he doesn't want the job, basically. He wants a project that stands on solid ground, literally as that. This Gefühl hat there. Yeah, he doesn't have that feeling. Nothing after the talks with Chelsea bosses. To some extent, I understand what he's saying in terms of, well, we started last year and clearly the first season hasn't gone well at all. So I understand why he would say that. Still disappointing.
I think it's fair to have doubts about this job. Like, I don't think we should look. I don't think we should
that's
look
the
at
next
it.
concerning thing. If Poch doesn't, what does that say about Poch?
I think we should look at it and think like, Chelsea is an attractive project for sure, and we won't struggle to get managers. But in terms of, I don't think this project is as attractive as I think a lot of us perhaps thought it was. I mean, I've been guilty of saying, this is a fantastic project. It's really attractive. It will be to certain managers, but I think there's also a trail of thought that actually there's still a lot of very uncertain things at Chelsea, and it could be unwise as a manager to throw yourself into it, potentially.
I mean, you can say it that way. You can also say it.
But it's a massive opportunity as well.
One thing's for sure, our people certainly didn't sell it well. Otherwise, Julian Nagelsmann wouldn't have left those talks with that conclusion. Regardless, he might be right in what he's thinking, but they certainly didn't sell it any differently. Otherwise, he wouldn't be thinking it. So that's also not exactly a great situation to be in, is it? Let's be honest. But I don't know, man. It's just depressing. It's just so depressing. But yeah, Pies, anything you still want to add to this one? Oh, yeah. I mean, when I have a really bad tribal day because, Bayern are now out of the Champions League and, even the league is going that well. But when I see too much Tuchel prop again, I might come out with blaming Tuchel for Nagelsmann not taking his job. It might be Tuchel that told him not to do it, for all we know. Wouldn't be surprised by how Tuchel spoke about us since then. But yeah, I'm not going to go there.
Hey, so Charlie's obviously, back in Poch a little bit more than us. So when you do the next stream about Tuchel, I'm doing Charlie's role for
yeah, we should.
I would just like to just clarify that I'm not like fully on board the Poch train. I'm just saying it. It's not as bad as some people think it is.
It's cool, bro. I'm joking.
No, not for you. Just in general, because I've seen a few things in the chat saying that I've got no doubts over him. There are doubts,
bro. I've been told on Twitter. I had to do a tweet because I've actually been told on Twitter that I want Poch to actually fail at Chelsea just to be right. Like, how fucking stupid is that? Like, honestly, people actually believe that if Poch gets appointed, people actually believe that I want him to fail. Like, what the fuck? Thinking he's going to fail, wanting him to fail is totally different. But
yeah, that is different. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And yeah, Josh is spot on. And please, Mudryk, do something about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, please save us. But yeah, and British government. But let's be honest, British government only did it after Putin did it. So, Andy, I don't think Putin is getting out of that one. That's for damn sure. But yeah. Hey, let's see what the next few days bring. I don't even know if I want the manager announcement now. Do you know what I mean?
Far away, but who knows?
It might not be. I mean, hey, they better not be choosing Kompany. Who the flip knows who the unknown guy is? So then just get Poch done. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it has to be Poch, I'd still prefer it to be done sooner than later. I will say that. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, again, please do subscribe to Charlie's channel. Have you changed the name of the channel?
Yeah, mate, slightly changed it. Only because when you type in The Blues Brothers, it comes up like the first hit that comes back is some blues music channel.
Yeah.
So
Blues Brother, isn't it?
Yeah, just Blue Brother now. So that's much, no dirt in it either. So it's still me, obviously, but yeah, I've just changed it slightly so it's easier for people to find in the search. You don't have to sift through a load of music to find it.
Exactly that. So, Blue Brother, link is down in the description. Just click the @ in the description down below. It takes you to Charlie's channel. Subscribe to him, please. Please follow Pice's website, londonsfirst.com, and of course, check him out on Twitter as well for all your Chelsea news. If you do want to get depressed a little bit more by negative Chelsea news, that's your place. Not because Pice does anything wrong, but that's all we get. Negative news that make us depressed. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. Again, subscribe if you haven't already. That'd be massively appreciated. Hit the like button on your way out. That'd be fantastic. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Up the Chelsea, upwards and onwards, up the Chelsea and what's left of it. My days. What a circus. What a circus. But yeah, thanks for watching. Up the Chelsea, upwards and onwards, and we'll see you next time.